So we've talked a lot about what different primates eat, and there are many different diets out there. Frugivory, folivory, faunivory, graminivory, nectivory, gummivory, grass, roots and tubers, and bark. And we also remember that diet influences almost every aspect of an organism. So now we're going to talk about how your diet influences your group size. But first, let's ask the question, why do primates even live in groups anyway? Because there are actually a lot of cons to group living. Resources are limited, so now we have a lot of competition. You need more resources to cover the entire group, and there's increased competition over the limited resources that you have. So now you need a larger territory for food, water, and nests. And groups are also conspicuous to predators. You're now going to have a harder time hiding from those predators. There's also the chance that you will have aggressive social interactions. So here you can see some snub-nosed monkeys and some gorillas getting at it. So we have a lot of cons to groups. So let's talk about the benefits to living in a group. First is predator defense. So even though you are more conspicuous to a predator, it is actually easier to defend yourself from them. Here we are showing increased vigilance. These are meerkats, not primates, but they are really good example for being very vigilant and active and knowing when a predator is coming up. We can also see cooperative defense in the form of mobbing. Again, this is a meerkat example, but see they're all mobbing this snake. If it was just one of them, the snake would have an easier time getting them, but when it's a mob, it's much harder for the snake to do anything. We also have alarm calls. So here we have a prairie dog doing his little call. But in this diagram, we're showing some monkeys. These are most likely guenons from West Africa. Guenons are particularly interesting because they have several very distinct calls. So they make a different call if they see an eagle, they see a leopard, or if they see a snake. And the interesting thing is they also go with different behaviors. If they see an eagle, they throw down immediately because they do not want to be caught up high in the tree. If they see a snake, they immediately go up because you don't want to be on the ground. So that's really cool, especially for guenons. We also see in general just the dilution effect, sometimes called the selfish herd, because if there's just so many of you, it might not be you that gets eaten by the predator. So there are some advantages to being in a group, even if you are more conspicuous. You can also see that there's predator confusion with a big group. So here we just have a bunch of different animals. These bison are now stampeding. That's pretty intimidating. So even though they are a prey animal for some predators, having a whole herd of them stampeding is likely to deter a predator. When you have a bunch of birds all flying in the same place or a humongous swarm of fish swimming together, that is much harder for a predator to figure out what to do and pick out just one individual to go after. We do also see that there is a bit of increase in foraging efficiency. It does depend a little bit on what you eat, but if it requires more effort to find the food in the first place, sometimes it is helpful if there are more individuals in your group. This is especially true when you want to eat meat. Chimpanzees do a little bit of cooperative hunting, and that just wouldn't be possible if they didn't live in a group and have friends that they could hunt with. There are some benefits to their social interactions as well, even though you could have aggressive ones. You don't need to find your mates. They're already there. Now you just need to convince them to be yours. You can also get a lot of assistance in child rearing. We see a lot of alloparenting or different individuals helping raise children. And there are also increased learning opportunities. There's information sharing. There's a lot of grooming and what we think is essentially gossip happening between different primates. And we do see a lot of cooperation or coalitions between different primates, whether it is in helping to secure a mate or helping to get some food. So here is a chimpanzee and her little baby. So there's a lot of opportunities for alloparenting, so different primates can help each other raise their young. And here we see some little baby capuchins learning what to do with this fruit here. Again, there are some costs of social interactions, increased risk of disease, social conflicts, And you do have competition for mates even if they're easily accessible. One of the other really sad consequences of living in a group is infanticide. This is actually the highest cause of infant mortality in mountain gorillas. This is observed in 17 primate species, 12 genera. So this is another thing you do have to worry about. But let's talk about the differences in group sizes and why you might find a big group or a small group. So we have a couple goals when we're thinking about group size. We want to maximize our access to critical resources, but we also want to minimize the within group competition. We want to maximize the success in between group conflicts because you want your group to win versus that other group over there. But we also want to minimize predation risk. So in a between group conflict, you want to have the bigger group, but to minimize predation risk, you probably want a smaller group. You want to maximize reproductive success, and that really depends on what other factors are happening when you're thinking about maximizing reproductive success. And really, it is all about food. What are you eating? How accessible is it? Is it available year round? Can you defend it? And different food sources all have different consequences for each of these different factors. But let's talk about some of the trends. Larger groups, we tend to find that they are terrestrial species, so they're living on the ground. They tend to be active during the day, and they tend to eat a lot of fruit. We also see these in places where there are very high predator density, so there's so many predators, you're going to run into one, so it's easier to have a larger group so you can defend yourself rather than try to hide from them. Smaller groups, these tend to be arboreal. They live in the trees, they're nocturnal, active at night, folivorous, so eating a lot of leaves, and have a relatively low predator density. There are, of course, many different permutations and different combinations of these factors, but this is what we see most often in large versus small groups. There's also some species which are territorial. So this means they are defending a specific home area from other populations of the same species. Um, it's costly. You need to take the time to patrol your area, and there is the potential injury because you are actually fighting with other individuals of your species to defend your home area. We tend to find this when resources are patchily distributed. That means there is a literal patch of resources that you are defending. So think back to our pygmy marmosets. They eat the sap from trees. They will defend that tree because that's their patch, that single tree. That is their resource. They very specifically maintain that tree how they want it, and they want to protect it from other pygmy marmosets. So in our figure on the bottom here, the areas where they don't overlap, that is the home range distribution we might see in a territorial species. The second one where we have overlapping ones, that's what we're going to see in a species that isn't territorial. Chimps are territorial, and we have actually observed a little bit of warfare where they fight over an area between two different groups, and the group that wins will annex that extra area.